SDPB shares the voices and experiences of South Dakotans, preserving our stories, our culture, and our sense of place. SDPB, good, useful, and full of wonder. As South Dakota's public media network, SDPB serves everyone with transparency, integrity, and commitment to open access. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB.
House Education will now come to order. If you are going to testify on a bill, make sure that you sign in the back of the room. A page will help you do so if you need to sign up digitally. Otherwise, you can do it on your phone. I also want to mention at this point in time that we will not be hearing Senate Bill 198. So if there's anybody in the room that wishes to testify on that bill that's from out of town, either for or against, you may do so. We'll take your testimony, and then if you'd rather come back at a later time for Senator Carr's bill on cell phone usage, you may also do that. So you bear that in mind if you, is there anybody here from out of town that's going to testify on 198? Okay. Are you able to come again next week, or do you want to take the test or give the testimony today? You have a choice. I would prefer to give the testimony today. That'll be fine. Sure. Yep. Just bear with us then. Okay. Shut your cell phones off. And also, I guess we've got a couple people gone, but I'm sure that at least one of them will return. So at this point in time, Mr. Secretary, please call the roll.
Representative Garcia, excused. DeGroot. Here. Halverson. Here. Rice. Here. Schwanz.
Here.
Baxter.
Here.
Heerman.
Here.
Ismay. Here. Arlen, excused. Jordan.
Here.
Uribulk.
Here.
Knowles.
Here.
Manhart.
Here.
Stevens. Greenfield.
Here.
Madam Chair, we have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. Next item of business is to entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the last meeting. There's been a motion by Representative Uribulk and a second by Representative Schwanz. All in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. They are approved. We'll continue on with our pages. Let's see, we have one page. Would you like to come forward, please, and tell us who you are, where you're from, and your future plans, please?
My name's Isla Rohde. I'm from Sturgis, South Dakota. I am a junior in high school, and my plans for the future are to be a pilot. Yes.
My name is Danica Eulis. I'm a senior from Dakota Dunes, and I'm going to become an accountant at K-State.
Thank you, and thank you for being here helping us out. Some days are shorter and some days are longer, and we appreciate you taking time off school to come out and be a part of serving here. And I hope your experience will be very valuable to you. With that, we are going to begin our bills today. We have Senate Bill 138, revise the time within which a recount for a school board election election must be completed. Proponent testimony starts now. Good morning, Senator.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the committee. Amber Holst, District 30 State Senator. This is a very simple bill. It seeks to ensure that a recount is completed before the elected candidate is sworn into a school board. And so we realized, because of an issue that happened with the Rapid City School Board election, that the recount process requires one person from each campaign to be appointed, and then like a third-party person to be appointed. And the statute right now says if that third-party person is not agreeable, but then there's no recourse if you can't keep agreeing on the third person. And so what happened is it kept being delayed and delayed and delayed because there was no agreement on who that third person should be. And so this bill seeks to fix that. So if the first person that the business manager appoints is not agreeable to one campaign or another, that then the Secretary of State will step in and hopefully appoint a third-party unbiased person to that situation. The Secretary of State has agreed that that is okay with them because it's probably very rare that this will ever happen, but we just needed to have a contingency plan so that we don't delay these recounts, so that the people are aware of the results of the election and the right person can get sworn in before the annual meeting of the board. So we don't have a candidate sworn in to a position that a recount is still going on and they might not be the rightful person who should have been sworn into that position. So with that, I'll stand by for further questions.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony. Any other proponents for the Bill 138? Any other proponents? Seeing there are no other proponents, we'll close that portion and we'll move on to opponent testimony. Are there any other any opponents in the room? Seeing there are no opponents in the room, we also don't have any online for this bill, so we don't need any rebuttal. We'll move on to committee questions. We're a quiet bunch today, okay. Okay, questions? No questions? Okay, we'll close that portion. We'll move on to committee discussion and or action. Representative Rice.
Yes, I know about this incident because it happened between Meade County and Pennington County. And I was out there trying to help the situation. I was trying to put signs. It was a mess. Meade County did a terrible job of trying to get this, trying to direct people to the right place to vote. They switched the place to vote, and then everyone didn't know where to go. And then it was, I hope this will never ever happen again. They didn't use their normal people they used. The school board did this election, and that was a mess too. I felt bad for the gentleman that was running for school board. But this is, yeah, in case this ever happens, this is a law that needs to happen, because I was out there putting signs where you're supposed to vote all the time and telling them where to go. And nobody knew where to go, and they were going to this church, and then they were going to this fire station, and it wasn't working. It was a big hassle. So this law needs to go, just in case anything like this ever happens again. I'm hoping with the elections being the same time as the other elections now, school board elections, that this will not happen. But I would vote yes on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move do pass.
Okay, there's been a motion do pass by Representative Baxter. There's been a second to that motion by Representative Manhart. Comments on your motion?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I too was part of this debacle, and I think it's an excellent bill, and thank the good senator for bringing it.
Okay, any other comments? Seeing none, we will cast our votes then. Mr. Secretary, if you could call the roll. This is a do pass motion on Senate Bill 138.
Representative Garcia.
Aye.
DeGroot.
Aye.
Halverson.
Aye.
Rice.
Aye.
Schwans.
Aye.
Baxter. Heerman.
Aye.
Ismay.
Aye.
Arland.
Aye.
Jordan.
Aye.
Uribalk.
Aye.
Knowles.
Aye.
Manhart.
Aye.
Stevens. Greenfield.
Aye.
Madam Chair, we have 15 yeas.
Okay, with that, Senate Bill 138 has passed, and we'll move down onto the floor. Would we like it to be on consent? Does anybody have any reservations? Okay, so Senate Bill 138 for now will be on consent. All right. Representative Jordan, do you have any comments on that?
I think it's a good bill.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Okay, the next bill that we have is Senate Bill 223 to modify the requirements for a petition to refer to excess tax levy of a school district to a vote. We'll now take proponent testimony on that. Good morning, Senator.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the House Education Committee. It's sort of like deja vu. I remember when I used to get to sit here with Chair Greenfield, and anyway, so it's a privilege to be here. Senate Bill 223 is a property tax relief bill, and it passed through the property tax summer study with their endorsement. It's also based on feedback that I received throughout the process of shepherding Senate Bill 85 through the Senate and the House in the last few weeks. Senate Bill 223 makes reasonable changes to petition signature requirements for referring opt-outs to the ballot. And it brings school district opt-out petition signature requirements into alignment with other petition signature requirements. Senate Bill 223 does not make it easy to refer an opt-out, but it makes it attainable. With Senate Bill 223 provisions, you can't just walk your neighborhood and get the required signatures or have your family sign that's over for Thanksgiving dinner or something like that. It still takes an organized effort of many motivated people. The signature requirement to refer an opt-out to the ballot is unattainable in certain school districts. Current law makes opt-outs unchallengeable by the people. In one of our largest school districts, the last opt-out referral was in 2002. However, it wasn't put on the ballot by the people. It was referred by the school board. They asked for $10 million, and that was rejected. They lowered the amount to $3 million, and that was approved. That school board has not referred another opt-out since then, and that was 24 years ago. And the citizens have not been successful in referring an opt-out, but it hasn't been for lack of trying. I mentioned that Senate Bill 223 aligns signature requirements for school district opt-outs with other petitions. There's a handout that I forgot to bring up. Just a second, I'll grab it. Okay, the page is handing out my handouts. Okay. So if you look, there's actually like 3 different handouts, but what you'll see is that in the gubernatorial election for Democrat and Republican candidates, it's 1%. You have to get 1% of the voters that voted in the last gubernatorial election, either Democrat or Republican. And for the largest school district in the state, you have to get 5% of total registered voters. So there's a disparity there. First of all, 1% versus 5%, and then also a disparity between, are we using total registered voters, or are we using the turnout? So what Senate Bill 222 does is I keep the 5%, I don't lower that to 1%, but I'm saying we should be looking at turnout, not total registered voters. You know, none of us mail to total registered voters when we campaign. We mail to frequent voters. And so those are the active voters, the ones that are paying attention, and the ones that are, frankly, probably live where they say they do, because the registered voters could have moved. They could have been deceased and just not been removed from the roll. So it's just really not a good list. Okay, so if you can find those charts and look at them, there's one that has a highlighted bar on it. That points out just what I just explained. So as you can see, Senate Bill 223 is very reasonable, and it's consistent with other petition requirements. That second spreadsheet down on the bottom that says 223, there's a current and a 223. So what, if you notice, for governor as a Republican, you would need to get 2,172 signatures statewide, and you have 90 days to do it. To refer an opt-out in our largest school district, you need 5,490 signatures, and you have 20 days to do it. It's just totally unattainable. And like I said, there have been heroic efforts to try to get things on the ballot, and they just have not been able to do it. There will be some other folks who will tell you a little bit more in detail about that. So with that, I will turn it over to the other proponents, and I would ask that you would please vote yes on Senate Bill 223. Thank you.
Thank you. Other proponents in the room? Morning. Yeah. Would you just start over again?
I will.
Thank you.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Beth Hughes. I'm from Sioux Falls. I'm here representing myself, and I stand in support of Senate Bill 223. Last year, I helped with a grassroots effort to challenge the $21 million opt-out passed by the Sioux Falls School Board. Under the referendum formula, we had to gather signatures from 5% of registered voters, or just under 5,500 signatures, almost twice as many as voted in the last school board election. Wow, what an effort. We started from a dead stop, no volunteer base, no mailing list, no funds, no prior experience. My husband is a representative for District 13, John Hughes. And when he went door-to-door campaigning in 2024, he knocked on more than 500 doors. And by far, the number one concern was high and escalating property taxes. Because of this, we felt that we needed to help with this grassroots effort. Our office is located at 38th and Phillips in Central Sioux Falls, so we became the de facto command central for this effort. Volunteers, more than 50 of them, started gathering signatures, and almost every single person we asked wanted to sign. We just didn't have enough time. Should it be this hard to give the people a voice when a 5-member school board votes to bypass statutory spending limits? If it's so easy to bypass them, why do we even have them? There is a lot of talk about trusting our school boards. This isn't a matter of trusting our school boards. This is a matter of respecting our citizen taxpayers and giving them a voice when statutory spending limits are bypassed. Our founding fathers set up a democratic republic to run on a system of checks and balances, not on blind trust. We also hear a lot about this is for the children. The best thing you as legislators can do for the children is to make sure that their parents aren't financially stressed because of high and escalating property taxes. Children absorb our stress, and financial stress is one of the major factors of families splitting up. Some of you may have seen the headlines about the Huron School District facing financial hardships following their school board's voting to approve a multi-million-dollar package, including a new arena scoreboard in addition to the high school. As a result, several teachers are facing either a pay cut or losing their jobs. More money needs to be pushed down into the classrooms, not spent on facilities and administration. The school board that approved those expenditures got it wrong. Please give our good citizens a realistic chance to be a check and balance when that happens. I urge a yes vote on SB 223 for our children.
Thank you for your testimony. Other proponents? Good morning.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, Jason Gloat from Pierre, South Dakota, registered lobbyist for the Freedom Foundation, a national nonprofit organization whose mission is to advance the principles of individual liberty, free enterprise, and limited accountable government. Senate Bill 223 is a simple, common-sense reform to improve government accountability and transparency to the people of South Dakota and guarantee taxpayer oversight of excess property tax spending where its effects are felt the most. Legislative Research Council data has shown that the total dollar amount of school district spending limit opt-outs far exceeds that of any other local government. It actually accounts for nearly half of the value of all local government excess tax levies in the state. Yet, despite record high excess property taxes, very few of those opt-outs have ever gone to a vote of the taxpayers themselves, as the prior proponents explained. Recognizing this, Senate Bill 223 would bring a much-needed layer of taxpayer transparency and accountability to property tax spending by school districts and stems from the work of the legislature's comprehensive property tax force last year. For those reasons, we respectfully urge your support. Thank you.
Thank you. Other proponent testimony? Other proponent testimony? Okay, we will then go online if there's no other proponent testimony in the room. Okay, Amy Bruner, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you very well. Thank you. Go ahead with your proponent testimony on Senate Bill 223, please.
Very good. Thank you. Good morning. My name is Amy Bruner, and I'm from Sioux Falls, and I'm here representing myself. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to testify in favor of Senate Bill 223. Last summer, the Sioux Falls School District passed a resolution for an excess tax levy or opt-out in the amount of $2.1 million over the next 10 years. As you know, state law provides that an excess tax levy can be referred to a vote if the people can collect petition signatures from 5% of the registered voters in the district within 20 days. So we went to work. I was involved with a group of more than 50 people who set out to gather the petition signatures. We needed approximately 5,500. That pencils out to 275 signatures per day, 34 signatures per hour for an 8-hour day. That's a lot of petition signatures, as I know that you all understand. We worked nonstop for almost 3 weeks. We went door to door. We organized drive-through petition collection sites. We stood at the entrance of large events. We collected signatures at the courthouse and other public places. Nearly every person we spoke with, including some teachers, signed our petitions. Most citizens agree that voters should be able to vote on tax increases. With the heroic effort of many volunteers, we were able to collect 2,302 signatures, just over half the number needed. We soon realized that collecting the signatures of 5% of registered voters is an impossible task, and it's not required of any other petition in South Dakota that I know of. Effectively, because of the number of signatures required, our school district does not have an option for a citizen referral. Senate Bill 223, if passed, would change the signature requirement to 5% of the voters who voted in the last school district election. This is not an easy number of signatures to collect, but it is attainable. The other issue is that Senate Bill 223, the other issue that Senate Bill 223 addresses is the time allowed to collect signatures. 20 days is not enough to stand up a campaign, as we found out. We did the best we could. We started a social media drive, including Facebook, but it takes time to build a following. We created a logo and made t-shirts. We published op-eds and we were interviewed by the media. But as you all know, political efforts require thousands of dollars. An effective media campaign includes expensive things like billboards, mailers, radio ads, and the like. And should the taxpayers really need to raise that type of funds to stave off an attempt to collect more tax dollars from us? No matter how you feel about taxpayer responsibility to raise these funds, doesn't really matter, actually, because we didn't have enough time to do it anyway. Senate Bill 223 would give us more time to collect the signatures, giving voters a greater chance at having a voice on our own bill. I have seen my property taxes go up year after year, and I'm frustrated. These ongoing incremental increases are adding up, and I feel helpless to stop them. How much is enough? Current South Dakota law has already set limits, but opt-outs allow school districts to circumvent these limits. Taxpayers like me are fed up. We should have a reasonable path to bring opt-outs to a vote, an actual say in our property taxes. Senate Bill 223 creates that path for our voice to be heard. Please vote yes on Senate Bill 223. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony, and if you would respectfully stand by in case there's any questions, we'd appreciate it.
Will do.
Okay, our next testifier would be...
He's against.
Yeah, okay. So that's it then for the proponent testimony, unless somebody else has come in. If not, we'll close that portion. We'll move on to opponent testimony in the room. Opponent testimony. Good morning.
Morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Sam Nelson. I'm a registered lobbyist for the Sioux Falls and Rapid City school districts. Want to start with what this is and is not about. I realize that this idea came from the the summer study in some form, but this is not about property taxes, or at least if it is, it's an inadequate solution if this is the way we want to go. And I feel like I've got deja vu here today because we've already rejected this bill or a form of it once, and we're kind of getting our second bite at the apple. But if this is about property taxes, we need to look at it holistically. We need to think about why are we not doing this with county governments and municipal governments if we want to change how we refer the decisions of those duly elected bodies. You all know, and you've heard me say that often the property tax, the largest portion of your property taxes does come from schools. And you've also heard me remind you folks that the largest portion of the school tax part of my bill comes from you all when you set the general fund levy. And so I struggle with some of the proponent testimony because it sounds from them like there's an outcry about this in Sioux Falls, and I have no illusions that people are under stress with property taxes. I've told you about my property tax bill and how those coats of paint were putting $90,000 of value on my house, which I know just wasn't the case. But nobody has showed up in any meaningful way at the public open meetings of the Sioux Falls School District to contest, discuss, debate, ask for more information, et cetera, on any of the opt-outs that the Sioux Falls School District has had. And so I ask myself, well, why are we coming to the legislature? And the only thing that I can conclude is, well, we lost under the current rules that we think are onerous, and so we want to make it easier for us to win. We heard about a democratic republic with checks and balances. Folks, the referral process as it currently written is one of those things, and it's written that way for a reason, okay? I understand that it's hard to gather signatures. I understand that it's not easy. We've heard a lot about that this year, but I'd submit to you that some of the previous testifiers that talked about Facebook and social media, that makes it a lot easier. I mean, my goodness, I learned about something that's going on in T, South Dakota, from T storm chasers before any real news outlet. I know what color the car was. I know how many shots were fired. And if I don't see it on T storm chasers first, my wife tells me because she sees it. And so I think when we talk about the difficulty, it's actually, I mean, think about 90 years ago if you wanted to refer something. This law has been around forever. Think about 50 years ago. You didn't have the tools that you have today to do this. I know it works because look at Liberty Land. I know it works because look at Senate Bill 201, which became RL 21. And with respect to the discussion about bringing things into alignment, I think that you're actually making it easier. The prime sponsor and I have had some discussions about, you know, if 3,000 people were in the last election, that'd be 150 signatures, and it'll be different going forward based off how we change our elections. But I grant you that. But at the end of the day, lowering this to that amount simply makes it too easy. And I've testified on this before. I'll try to keep it brief again. But if we're going to start doing that, we need to start doing it for everything, to include the G-bill and special appropriations. And in response to that before, you've heard that, well, it's different because we have 105 legislators. Well, we have 684,126 registered voters, according to the last general election. So that's 0.000153% of the state's population that gets to make decisions with all our tax dollars. So why aren't we making it easier to refer those decisions? The last one I want to leave you with is talking about kids and making sure families aren't stressed by property tax bills. I'm here to tell you I'm stressed by my property tax bill, and I've got kids. I'm also real stressed by how little we spend on education in this state. And so if you want to relieve my stress, adequately fund the education pursuant to the law you're supposed to follow. Thank you.
Thank you. Other opponents?
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of House Education. Heath Larson, Executive Director, Associated School Boards of South Dakota. We represent approximately 845 school board members, the schools they govern and students they serve. I do rise in opposition today for Senate Bill 223. We've heard a lot of, from the proponents, a lot about how the petition process doesn't work. Well, let's talk about how it does work. And for FY26 taxes payable, there were 14 new opt-outs put in place in South Dakota. How many of those were either referred by the Board of Education to election or had the signatures and the petition process followed? There were 5 of them. So over 33% of those actually went to an election based on the process that we have. How many of those were passed? All 5. So 5 of 5 in that process. So I would contend that the process that we do have does work. If we're trying to single out one specific school district or 1 or 2 school districts, whatever that may be, I'm not so sure that's the appropriate place in the state legislature to have that discussion when we want to identify or try to single out just one specific situation. I don't follow or have much knowledge of the Team T Storm Chasers, nor do I have Facebook. But I will say we do know, as Mr. Nelson said so well, there's so much information anymore that is on social media with gathering information, sending information out to people. I have a hard time believing that we can't generate enough interest. So then I ask myself, maybe, just maybe, there isn't support to defer this to an election. Maybe the people in the local community are supportive of what the local school board is doing and they trust their local school boards. I think we have to think of that part of the page as well. So with all of that, this root discussion of this, whether it's opt-outs, et cetera, comes down to one simple thing, and that's school funding. It comes down to school funding. And I'm not up here asking, begging, et cetera, for more. We know it's a lean budget year. We do a lot with very little in this state to educate our students. But at the root of this is school funding. I urge you to vote no on Senate Bill 223. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the House Education Committee. Sandra Waltman with the South Dakota Education Association. I have been involved in a couple of ballot collection signature processes in the past, and it is time-consuming. It is a lot of hard work. But if you have an engaged electorate, you have a lot of opportunity to get signatures if the public is engaged and they care about the issue. The purpose of gathering signatures, and I believe the reason that you have these thresholds is to ensure that there is enough of the public that is interested in having this debate to put it on the ballot to go through the process of election. So I was just doing a little bit math, and when you gather signatures, you have to kind of plan and break down, okay, how many signatures do you need? The proponents claim they had 50 volunteers, so I use that math. You need 5,500 signatures in 20 days. That's roughly 275 signatures a day. If you have 50 volunteers going out and doing the work, that's 5.5 signatures over those 20 days. Even if you only have 25 volunteers going out every day, that's an average of 11 signatures a day. If your school community is really concerned about the opt-out, it should not be that much of a challenge to get 11 signatures a day with just 25 people. Opt-outs are made after there's a lot of discussion by the school board. The public has the opportunity to give input, and then they make the decision. This is not a one-meeting decision, so you have time to think about if they're going to opt out, if people are concerned about it, we need to get organized. We believe that this bill just makes it too easy, and you are going to find a lot of voter fatigue, and so we would urge you to vote no.
Thank you. Any other opponents in the room? Good morning.
Morning, Madam Chair. How are you today?
Couldn't be better. Finer than frog hair, as my friend used to say.
Perfect. This bill is one that we do not need. If you all remember, Rapid City recently had a TIF vote. They had to follow the same rules. They had 5%.
Wait a minute. Well, if you could just back up and introduce yourself.
We're such good friends, Madam Chairman. I
I
thought
know, but the people online might want to know who you
Mitch
are.
Richter, South
Sorry, I
Dakota.
apologize for not catching that. sir.
Mitch Richter, South Dakota United School Association. The Rapid City TIF vote had the same requirements, 5% in 20 days. They needed to get about 3,000 signatures. They got almost 6,000 signatures, took it to the ballot, and the TIF vote was rejected. So this law works. If the citizens want to get engaged, they will do that. And I think what you heard from previous opponents was maybe there just isn't the sentiment that the proponents of this bill think is out there. I would urge you to send this bill to the 41st day.
Thank you. Good morning.
Morning, Madam Chair and members of the committee. I'm Diana Miller, registered lobbyist for the large school group, and I too rise in opposition to Senate Bill 223. I think you've heard the arguments, and I'd just like to reiterate and reemphasize at least three of them. Number one, you heard about the election in Rapid City from Mr. Richter and Liberty Land, and they were able to do it under this current law. So it's not impossible. And you heard about the math from Ms. Waltman, and I think it can be done. I think you're also looking at what Mr. Larson stated, maybe, just maybe, the school board has done the right thing in the various committees or communities, and they've been elected just as you have been elected. They meet monthly. They continue to be the direct link to their constituents. Maybe they're happy with what the school district has decided to do, and maybe they didn't want to opt out. And lastly, you're questioning and changing the law for one particular school district because supposedly the thought is that they're unhappy. You have school board meetings to attend. You can attend monthly. You can meet with the superintendent or any member of the individually with the board, and they'll be happy to talk to you. I don't think you can find a school district in this state where you don't have transparency and access to the members on that school board. And I think lastly, I would just encourage you to change the conversation a little bit, as you've heard from us. Everybody wants to talk property tax. What about funding? Change the direction of that. And maybe, just maybe, we'll have something important enough to discuss about funding that we will feel if you discuss the funding, you'll see a change in the property tax attitude. So, Madam Chair and members of the committee, I respectfully ask that you defeat Senate Bill 223, and thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the committee. Rob Munson, Executive Director for School Administrators of South Dakota. I'd like to first thank you for helping my colleague Mitch Richter through the process of identifying himself. He's new to the Capitol, and really appreciate you giving him some guidance this morning. I have nothing new to bring to this discussion. I will not belabor the committee time. I say I agree with everything you've heard today, and a me too. Please oppose this bill.
Thank you. Any other opponents in the room for Senate Bill 223? Seeing no other opponents in the room, we will move on to opponent testimony online. Mr. Nold, are you there?
I am here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. You can go ahead and identify yourself and begin your testimony, please.
Good morning, Madam Chair and House Education Committee members. My name is Dr. Jamie Nold, and I serve as the superintendent of the Sioux Falls School District. Senate Bill 223 specifically, again, attacks public schools and stands against local control by elected school board officials. This bill, just like Senate Bill 85, does not encompass other entities that exist under the same laws, which have the same or higher opt-outs. Senate Bill 223 is an attempt to use the legislature to negatively impact schools that serve all students. This year in our district, we cut $3 million from our ongoing budget. Next year, we will again propose to cut $2 to $2.5 million and $1 to $1.5 million the year after. We have to always remember that that is 85% of our budget being salaries and benefits. These cuts are jobs that belong to members of our community, yet we do continue to keep our costs as low as we possibly can. and still give raises to our teachers every single year, well beyond what we receive from the state. Senate Bill 223 will continually make it harder for public schools to maintain a balanced budget, pay teachers, and maintain local control. This is not always just a Sioux Falls issue, as some would lead you to believe. We have the second lowest levy of the 11 districts in our area. We're the 120th lowest out of 150 school districts in property valuation per student, which means we're in the bottom 20% of that our evaluation. We have not levied what we can in opt-outs. We only take what is needed, leaving a significant portion back in the hands of our taxpayers. And most important, a group of area business leaders vetted and recommended our opt-out to the school board, and our school board implemented that. It did have public feedback as well. Yet individuals that propose Senate Bill 223 do not follow their own lead in almost all other areas of taxation. They ignore the fact that sales tax grows in excess of 4% per capita almost every year, while giving schools 3% or inflation, whichever is less, and undermining a school's ability to balance their budgets to trying to severely limit opt-outs. One other data point that I would like to share is from FY08 to FY24, the Sioux Falls School District's per student aid increase was 60%. That includes our $11 million opt-out in 2024. What was the state per capita sales and contractors excise tax over the same period? 91.4%. That includes a credit of $60 million that we will give the state for property tax relief granted in 2017. That's 50% more growth over 16 years. If taxes are too high in the state, why not look there first and utilize those extra dollars to offset property taxes? Senate Bill 223 does directly attack public schools and no other entities. It does take away local control from our locally elected school boards. It does force higher costs due to elections that can be called by such a very small number of people. And it does take away local options to balance state budget or balance our budget based on state aid that we continue to receive that does not meet the rate of inflation for the past 2 years. Madam Chair and members of the House Education Committee, the current process has worked before when enough people wish to have something brought to a vote, and there's a much better bill that addresses this at the same time. I would ask that you vote against Senate Bill 223 and look for other ways to save dollars that do not impact our teachers and youth. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your testimony, Mr. Nolden. If you would stay online in case there are committee questions, I'd appreciate it. Has anyone else come in the room that wants to be an opponent? Seeing there are none, we will move on to proponent rebuttal, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Well, I will start by
Just,
saying...
if you could just
yeah, sorry.
identify.
So sorry. Sue Peterson, State Senator, Sioux Falls. I'll start by saying you've not seen this bill before. Senate Bill 85 is a completely different bill. This is a bill about the number of signatures you need to get and about the number of days that you have to get them. And that is a property tax accountability piece. It ensures that the citizens have a voice in whether or not their property taxes go up and whether or not the school boards can levy an excess levy. And this gives them a realistic way to be able to have that voice. When these laws were put in place initially, the referendum process was meant to be a check and balance. And because the signature requirement is so high and based on an unrealistic number, they don't have a voice. Essentially, in the larger districts, the citizens have no way really to get an opt-out even on the ballot. It's not even saying, it's not preventing a school board from doing an opt-out, it's just giving the citizens a say in whether or not they want that. So, you know, is 5,500 or nearly 5,500 signatures reasonable in 20 days? I think maybe we should ask any of the opponents if they've had to gather 5,500 signatures in 20 days. You heard from the citizens. They had a heroic effort. And I also think there was maybe a little bit of a Common Core math or something being used, but you can't assume that all 50 volunteers were getting signatures 24 hours a day. They do need a little bit of sleep. And you do have to have some folks who are organizing the effort. Not everybody is going door to door getting signatures. So I do think that it is an unrealistic number, and I think that's been proven. You know, the difference between the school district opt-out this last fall and the Rapid City situation is that they knew that this was coming in Rapid City for a long time before it was ever passed by the local governing board. So they had some heads up on getting organized. You know, I would say that in reference to the number of opt-outs that have been put on the ballot and the number that have been passed, I would say that this system probably does work in some small towns because you just have a whole smaller population. You have a smaller number of registered voters and you have a smaller number of turnout. So it would the proposed system would also work in the small towns. And there's a hold harmless provision too that requires that if the new formula said you had to get less than 50 signatures, this would bump it up to 50. So nobody would have to get less than 50, which is what we have to get. Talking about cuts in the budget, you know, in the last few years, the schools have gotten a lot of COVID money, and that was meant to be one-time money, and that should not have been used for ongoing expenses. So unfortunately, if it was used for ongoing expenses, those are going to have to be cuts. But that was not meant to be used like that. So this bill is not about trusting school boards or not trusting school boards. It's about restoring the taxpayer's voice in how we spend dollars. And it does restore and respect local control because the taxpayers, the citizens, are the lowest level of local control. Government is not the be-all and the end-all. Government is not the lowest level of local control. The citizens are the lowest level of local control. And also address comparing the legislature to school boards in terms of representative government. If you think about what we have to do to get a bill passed here, it has to go to the committee in one chamber, it has to go to the floor in that chamber. If it makes it through those two, it has to go to the committee in the next chamber. If it makes it through that, it has to go to the floor. And you have to win by a majority of vote each time. So that's 18 votes in the Senate, that's 36 votes in the House on the floor, and then you have to get the governor to sign it. So that is 5 very comprehensive steps by 105, 106 if you count the governor, that are looking at a bill and evaluating it and saying yes or no before it's finally passed and signed into law. When you talk about a school board, they have 5 or 7 or however many members they have to pass it by 2/3. So, you know, let's say maybe that means 5 members of a school board, even say 7 members. That's just the number that are on, it's the smallest number that is on any of our committees. So in the Senate, that's the smallest number we have, is a 7-member committee. And it's a one-step process with no check and balance afterward. So that is really not a representative comparison in terms of claiming that there's representative democracy in place in both instances. So with that, I would just ask that you would favorably support Senate Bill 223 and restore the citizens' voice to the opt-out process. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll close the portion of the rebuttal, and we'll move on to committee questions. Representative Arlant.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mm-hmm. I have a question for Superintendent Nold, if he's still online.
I am.
Excellent.
Go ahead with your question, Representative.
Yeah, you know, something caught my ear in the rebuttal. What ongoing expenses are you utilizing COVID money for?
Madam Chair and Representative Arlant, we do not use ongoing COVID money. The COVID money ended. It was correct that all entities across our state, whether that be business owners or others, including the state itself, had the dollars that were used for COVID, and during that time, that was limited. We had to close that out. We did eliminate those positions that were aligned with that, and we currently go off of what we get from the state and what we receive in the opt-outs.
Does that answer your question, Representative? Do you have a follow-up or anything? Okay. Other questions of the committee? Representative Schwans.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Question for the prime, please.
State your question, please.
Thank you. Do we currently have citizens in the school districts and in the state of South Dakota? Do they typically reach out to the schools or to the legislation for property tax issues?
Madam Chair, State Senator Sue Peterson, thank you for the question, Representative. Well, generally what we find is that in legislative districts, we tend to go door to door in Sioux Falls. That's a big part of our campaign. And so we actually reach out to them because we're at their door, and then they tell us what's on their mind. Generally, in Sioux Falls, I don't think that school board candidates go door to door for any number of reasons. Probably a larger territory to cover, that kind of thing. But the point of that is that they're probably not at the door talking directly to the people. And so I do think people reach out to their legislators probably more than they reach out to their school board. And it's, you know, people are busy. They're living their daily lives. Most of them can't show up to a school board meeting or even a city council meeting every week and know exactly what's going on every agenda item. But I do think as legislators, we are very accessible. And so I think that we probably get the feedback that they don't get. Their only way really of that they've expressed their feedback is in these opt-out efforts to refer those to the ballot.
Go ahead with your follow-up.
So would you concur that the voice of the people is really the pushing factor of this particular bill so that they feel that they are heard and listened to because they have not been heard and listened to by the typical opt-out process?
And that's the genesis of my bill. That's why I brought the bill. I didn't just come up with this idea, you know, out of the blue. It's what we heard when we went door to door. And as we watched citizens try to gather enough signatures to put something on the ballot, they couldn't get it done. And so it really is based on feedback from citizens.
Go ahead.
One more question. This is just a little bit of a different topic. So when there's an opt-out, is it typical for a school to opt out for 10 years?
Madam Chair? Not that I'm aware of. I think it's happening a little bit more frequently now, but generally, I think the opt-outs in the small towns tend to be smaller dollar amounts. You know, we need a bus, we need a computer system, we had a roof blow off in the derecho, something like that. It's generally, it's a one-time thing. It's not a 10-year, $2 million a year over 10 years that then is cumulative, so that you have, you know, $15 million a year in opt-outs on your tax bill.
I have a question for you, Senator. How many actual people do you think did go door to door? You know, you said that there were other people, I believe, that were involved, part of the process, but actual people going to the door.
Madam Chair, do you mean legislators in their campaigns?
No, I'm talking about trying to collect like these signatures for the opt-out.
Sure. So I think it probably varied given the day and the time. People tried to, you know, when they say they had 50 volunteers, they didn't have 50 that could work 24/7 on this. They maybe had 50 that could give a couple hours here and a couple hours there, or they would get home from work, have dinner, and go out from 6 to 8 o'clock at night, sort of like we do as legislators. So it wasn't 50 people working full time. I guess it'd be hard to estimate, but maybe, I mean, if you tried to say it was full time, maybe 10 to 15 if you condensed it all down to like an FTE, I would guess. They could probably answer that better, but that's sort of an estimate.
I just have another question for you before we go on. How many signatures did you personally get by petition?
Me personally,
Yeah.
for my legislative race?
No, for an opt-out.
Oh, well, I wasn't involved in the opt-out petition signature gathering.
Okay, thank you. Other questions? Okay, is this for the prime? Or is there any other question for the prime so she doesn't have to keep moving back and forth? Okay, thank you. There is a question by Representative Gary Bach for Mr. Nold. Go ahead with your question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was just wondering if you could talk about the process of, deciding when to go for an opt-out, how that happens in school board meetings, just kind of that runway up to that decision before voting on that.
Do you understand the question, Mr. Knoll? Did you hear it?
I do believe I do.
Okay, go ahead.
Madam Chair and Representative, we do go through a process where we do have committees that go through our entire budget process, and we do have community members that serve on those committees. As I had stated earlier, we do also utilize business leaders within our community in our financial action network group, and to be able to vet those things as well. And so we do go through a process that lasts over 5 months before we bring it to the board, and the board will work on it then in 3 different committees, 3 different meetings that are public meetings that do allow for public feedback before they actually vote during the summer, the 4th meeting, where they approve the budget for the next year. So it's an extensive process that we go through. We allow open public comment on every single one of those meetings that they have, the work sessions, there's 2 of which, another board meeting where they tentatively approve, and then the board meeting during the summer. That is outside of all the committee meetings that involve community members and the meeting with our business community members as well. So it goes through an extensive process before we do finalize and ratify the budget, which would include anything that we would utilize as an opt-out.
Does that answer your question? Other questions of the committee? Mr. Nold, I have a couple of questions. You said that you allow for a public meeting. You had, the last opt-out you had was $11 million, is that correct?
Madam Chair, the last opt-out, so we do have a small opt-out that we utilize year after year that goes through, but our total that we did utilize this last time was $11.5 million.
Okay, and may I ask what that was for? Was that just to meet expenses, or what was?
Yes, that absolutely is. So we actually could, that's been approved through the board, Madam Chair, through the opt-out process, 17 million that could be utilized. We do not do that. We do not take, we only take what we need to make sure to balance the budget, to ensure that we continue to give our teachers salary increases. So that went through our general funds, and it went into our general. So we use that for 85% of it goes towards teacher salaries, teacher benefits, staff benefits, and salaries. So it did go to the general, and we utilized it that way.
One more question, and then I'll leave you alone. When you had the public meeting for the opt-out, what would you say was the attendance like for the public coming in?
Madam Chair, the public attendance was very small, limited, if non-existent. We do try to advertise those things out. We do advertise, obviously, the opt-out, and it was very limited. There was, as was stated earlier by individuals, a group that did work to get signatures. We are open to always that. If it needs to go through a signature process, and if time is the issue, then time could be addressed, but not the number just to lower it so such a small individual group can force a vote and cost additional expenses to our taxpayers. So there was very, very limited, even though we advertise those meetings, post those meetings, and through 4 different public meetings where there could be public feedback, I believe there's one individual that spoke against.
Thank you. I lied. I'm not ready to let you go yet. What is the cost?
It was just a sub-part of your second question.
Oh, yeah. We'll go with that. The vice chair is being saucy here with me. That's okay. I'll get him later. When you have an opt-out, what is the cost to the school district for the expense for an opt-out?
So, Madam Chair, to answer the second part of your question, I'm not sure I fully understand, but if it were to go to a vote, it's about $63,000 on the odd years. Okay. Now, we're going to be partnering, obviously, with the election, so we don't know that yet. We haven't been through that process. It'll still cost us, but we don't know what that process is as of yet and the cost of that. If that's what the question was, I apologize if I did not answer.
No, that's fine. I guess I didn't make myself clear. I was asking about a special election, and you answered it's about $63,000, so. Thank you. Thank you for that. Any other questions? Seeing no other questions, we will move on to committee discussion. Anybody have anything to say? Representative Manhart.
I would move do pass.
Okay, there's a motion do pass on Senate Bill 223. Second. There's a motion by Representative Manhart, a second by Representative Jordan. Comments on your motion?
Yeah, I think the biggest worry here really is the fact that it takes, 5,500 signatures for a school district. And I like how the governor's race is put on here for Republicans and Democrats. It's 2,200 for a Republican candidate to get on the ballot in the span of 90 days. It's about 1,200 for a Democrat candidate to get on the ballot for governor in about 90 days. And for a Sioux Falls school district opt-out, it takes 5,500 signatures in the span of 20 days. And how petitioning works is that's usually the baseline. You usually have to get 6,000, 7,000, 8,000 to make sure it's all valid. So, there was definitely a mighty effort to get that done here recently, but I just think that's way too much. So,
thank you. Other comments?
I'd just like to second what Representative Manhart just said. It's kind of these people that organized the petition, they could have just ran for governor. So that's all I got to say.
Other comments? Yes, Representative Stevens.
I have a substitute motion to move it to the 41st day. Second.
Okay, there's a substitute motion by Representative Stevens to move this bill to the 41st day, and there's a second by Representative DeGroot. Comments on your motion?
Well, I have several comments in this regard. I truly do believe this is a second bite at the apple, and it may not be the exact wording, but the motivation behind the ones that we've seen and dealt with the same thing is really the same thing, and that's to attack the public schools. It's not to include the counties or the municipalities at all. It really is an attack on that. This bill, this law has been in effect for 31 years, since 1995. And it's worked fine for everybody, and then we have this situation that is brought before us about Sioux Falls. And I think it still works for Sioux Falls as well. Somebody indicated that, we have a statutory law that needs to be followed. Well, we have a statutory law that the school board has been following, and they've been following it for many years. And that provides the taxpayers a voice. The taxpayers have a voice in their school board. The recent superintendents did a survey about how many people show up at their school board meetings when it comes to budgets and these type of things, and over 80% have no one showing up to any of the school board members. So if you're going to have a voice, you need to show up. And I served on the school board for 22 years, and I'm just telling you, those percentages are accurate. They're absolutely accurate. People do not show up. So whose fault is that? Is that the school board? So you can look at it one of two ways. Well, gee, we have to get all of these votes, all these signatures, and we can't do it. Well, Rapid City did it. Rapid City got those votes, and from that standpoint, and so then it makes you wonder, you know, as someone has said, well, maybe that's an indication that the people do trust their school boards. And as the good superintendent from Sioux Falls was indicating, he gave a very accurate description of what a school board goes through in order to put a opt-out before the people. It isn't just a surprise. School boards set forth their agenda all the time. People know in advance. People know it well in advance that there's going to be an opt-out, what the purpose of it is, and they have plenty of times to show up. As the good chairman indicated, how many people show up to school board meetings? None. Generally none. In this instance with Sioux Falls, you have one person that literally showed up. And I will just tell you too, when I served on a school board, they didn't have any problem finding my phone number. They didn't have a problem finding me or talking to me when I went through the grocery store. And in fact, I think school board members have much more contact with their constituents because of the smaller people they're dealing with than we as legislators do. You know, when we have elections, we do go out and we do meet our people from that standpoint. So, you know, what is a referral? That is a clear legislative check and balance. And clearly, Liberty Land is a great example of those people who really got involved. I'm just thinking this, you got a city of 224,000 people and you can only find 50 people to go out and take a petition? And to me, that really indicates a lack of interest by the people. And then when you look at the cost and you look at the fact that of all of the opt-outs, every one of them 100% passed at a cost of taxpayers. And if we're going to talk about saving taxpayers money, you know, that's one waste of time, you know, to do that. And I do think it comes down to an attack on public schools. I think it is a situation where we really do need to be looking at funding. And if you're going to treat one group differently, you need to treat them all differently. And that's why it's clearly, to me, an attack on the public schools that we just can't allow that to happen. And that's why it should go to the 41st day.
Okay, no, nothing more to be said?
No, I don't have anything to add to that. He's covered all the bases, I think. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? All right, there is a substitute motion then to move this Senate Bill 223 to the 41st day. Mr. Secretary, would you please call the roll?
Representative Garcia. No. DeGroot.
Yes.
Halverson.
Yes.
Rice.
No.
Schwanz.
No.
Baxter.
No.
Heerman.
Yes.
Ismay.
No.
Arland.
Yes.
Jordan.
No.
Uribalk.
Yes.
Knowles.
No.
Manhart.
No.
Stevens.
Aye.
Greenfield.
Aye.
Madam Chair, there are 7 yeas, 8 nays.
Okay, with that, then Senate Bill 223 has passed, and we'll move on.
We haven't voted on it yet. We just did that 45.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Okay, we'll go back. The other motion was do pass, and there was a second, and so Mr. Chair or Mr. Secretary, whoever you want to be today, please call the roll.
Representative Garcia.
Clarification, this is for the do pass?
This is for the do pass. She said aye.
DeGroot.
No.
Halverson.
No.
Rice.
Aye.
Schwanz.
Aye.
Baxter.
Aye.
Heerman.
No.
Ismay.
Aye.
Arland.
No.
Jordan.
Aye.
Uribalk.
No.
Knowles.
Aye.
Manhart.
Aye.
Stevens. Greenfield.
No.
Madam Chair, there are 8 yeas, 7 nays.
With that, Senate Bill 223 passes and goes on to the floor. We have then one more item. As I told you earlier, we're not going to be having a presentation on the Senate bill on the cell phones today. And so we have somebody here, though, that wants to testify in the room. as an opponent of the Senate Bill 198, and I will allow that to happen. If you would like to come forward, sir. We are talking about restrict the use of cell phone by a student during the school day. Thank you for being here today, and just identify yourself and go on with your testimony, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee, for hearing me today. My name is Colby Shuck. I am representing myself. I am a middle school and high school principal in South Dakota with nearly 30 years of experience in education, and I'm here to respectfully oppose Senate Bill 198. Let me begin by saying that I fully understand and share the concern about students' distraction and the impact that cell phones and other electronic devices can have on learning. This is a real issue in our schools, and one that administration and teachers are actively working to address every day. However, Senate Bill 198 removes the essential elements of effective school leadership, which is the local control. Schools across South Dakota are very different. What works in one district may not work in another. As administrators, we need flexibility to develop policies that reflect our students, our staff, and our community expectations. Many schools have strong cell phone policies in place. Some restrict use during instructional time, while others have more structured systems. These decisions are best made at the local level, not through a one-size-fits-all state mandate. Additionally, this bill limits professional discretion in the classroom. Teachers are in the best position to determine when technology supports learning and when it becomes a distraction. A blanket restriction risks removing these opportunities. There is also practical concerns with enforcement. Policies like this can become difficult to implement consistently and may shift time and focus away from instruction towards policing behavior. This can strain relationships between students, staff, without necessarily improving outcomes. I would emphasize that our role as educators is not only to limit distractions, but also to teach students responsibility. Technology is a part of their world. We should be helping them learn how to manage it appropriately, not simply removing it altogether. When combined with clear expectations and teacher guidance, cell phones support a modern, connected, and future-ready classroom environment. In classroom practices, as some of my teacher colleagues have shared with me, cell phones can be a valuable tool when used with clear expectations. For example, cell phones can be used for QR code-based scavenger hunts in core subjects, allowing students to actively engage with the content while moving and collaborating. They also serve as a quick reference tool during review activities like a Jeopardy-style games, where students can check information and stay involved in the learning process. In media and other courses, cell phones can provide access to cameras for photography and video projects. This is especially important because not all students have access to this dedicated equipment, but many have access to a phone. Students can record interviews, connect to wireless microphones, and create content in real-world, hands-on learning situations. Cell phones also allow students to use study apps and tools that they are already familiar with, increasing the likelihood that they will actually use those supports outside of the classroom. Just as importantly, these opportunities can be used to teach responsible use, digital citizenship, cyber safety, appropriate behavior. Students learn that access to their phones in class is a privilege tied to expectations, and that privileges can be removed if misused. There are even times when appropriate use, such as listening to music during an independent work study, helps some students focus and be less distracted. While it is true that many of these tasks can be completed on a computer, students often respond differently to their personal cellular device. As some teacher colleagues have noted, students are often more engaged, more comfortable, and more willing to participate when they're using a device that they already use as a part of their daily lives. And that's what they use it for, their daily lives. A blanket restriction removes these opportunities and limits educators' ability to connect students' learning to the real world in meaningful ways. In closing, while the intent of SB 198 is understandable, it overreaches and takes the decision-making away from local schools and limits the flexibility educators need to do their jobs effectively. I respectfully ask the committee to consider preserving local control and allowing school districts to continue to develop policies that are best serve the students within their district. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. And I would ask that the committee think about any possible questions that you could ask him before he leaves. Representative Yuri Bach has a question for you, and there might be some other ones, so go ahead, Representative.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you so much for coming all this way. I was just wondering if your cell phone policy is public online that anyone could look up.
Yes, it's listed in our student handbook, which is online.
Representative Jordan.
Thank you for coming again. I was just curious where you were from again. I didn't catch that at first.
What?
Thanks for driving here and testifying today. I just didn't catch where you were from.
I currently reside in Kadoka, but I'm representing myself, not Kadoka Area School District.
Thank you. I was just curious that you drove all the way here to do that. I just wanted that to be acknowledged.
And it's a time change. That's early.
Yeah. All right, thank you.
We don't feel sorry for you. This was your choice.
I don't think so, you do.
Other questions, Representative Rice.
It's a question comment, I guess. Last year I passed a resolution for cell phones, just so we can have local control, and I think it worked with the good, I guess, our governor's wife, Our Lady of, South Dakota. She went around to educate schools and stuff, and I think about 90% of our schools are on doing what's right with our cell phones, or I'll have a policy. So I think it kind of worked. So I'm thinking, are you thinking that this new policy is gone a little too far, or do you think the old, the one that we passed last year just with a resolution is fair enough?
I think that it's fair enough. This current one is just, it takes away a lot of our ability, and the things that we've been, for the last 3 years since I've been Dean of Students / Principal, is we have instituted a policy within our school that allows our teachers to utilize those technologies as they see fit. A vast majority of the teachers do not allow them in the classroom. They're not, and the kids respect that. But it hurts me that we're kind of going backwards and kind of taking it away. But when we can utilize these technologies and teach a kid how to use a phone appropriately, when to answer, when to look, when to do, I think that that's a better use of our educational platform that we have. You bet.
A real quick question. And this is unfortunate that we don't have the author of the bill here, because part of the bill says that it allows for educational accommodations. And a large part of your testimony dealt with, we can't do this, we can't do that anymore. Does this bill, and again, this is not fair to you, does this bill allow for educational accommodations?
The testimony
or is that for
that I
more
heard
of a
on the
special ed issue?
Sorry. The testimony that I heard on the floor makes it sound like it would be a bell-to-bell kind of thing, to where the kids would not be allowed to have a cell phone or use their cellular devices throughout the day unless it was for medical or the accommodations. And now, to me, speaking as an accommodation, that would be something that would have to be written into a 504 on IEP plan. That wouldn't be something that I said, we're going to record each other doing an interview and we're going to use our cell phones. That's not really, in my opinion. I don't know what the actually, what they want to do, but that's, I would hate for it to take away what we have built, especially in our school, and the way that we have taught these kids how to use phones. And they are respectful about it. They are not, this is not an issue. If you have good classroom management, this shouldn't be an issue.
Representative Halverson. Oh, did you have a follow-up, Representative Halverson?
Madam Chair, my question is this. How many times have you had to enforce any violations in your school?
The first year that we started with this type of policy, which was about 3 years ago, maybe a handful. The next year, maybe a few less. This year, it's 0. We don't have to deal with it. The kids know a lot of our teachers do the bag rule, is that the kids lift up their phones, stick it in their bag, and it's not on their person. They can't feel it vibrate. They have no, and that's just what they do. And then the minute that the teacher says, you know, okay, you can take out your cell phones, they take them out and they can do what they need to be doing, whether it's an educational or checking a text from mom or whatever it is. So this year we've had 0.
I have a question for you. Do your teachers write that into their lesson plan, like when they possibly be using this type of technology?
On occasion, yeah, you know, as I go through because I go through the lesson plans of most of the teachers, and we kind of have, and they may not put it in there specifically, but they're using, you know, like I said, you know, the Jeopardy game, or when they use their scavenger hunt. Scavenger hunts are really big with middle schoolers right now. So they go around and they can do the scavenger hunt where they use their phone to click on stuff, and it's amazing. You go in there and sit in there and watch them just absorb all that knowledge rather than being lectured to or doing a worksheet. When you have those hands-on things with the kids, especially when you put that cell phone, that really engages it if it is used appropriately, if you have good classroom management. If it's not, then maybe the school district like that needs to have a ban on cell phones, but that's up to that individual school district. We don't need that. We're good.
Thank you. Any other questions of the gentleman before we stop? Thank you for being here today, sir.
Thank you.
And thank you for giving us your testimony. And you were the only one we could ask questions of, so you were on the hot seat for a while. We appreciate that.
I'm used to questions.
Okay, with that then, we will put that on hold and, excuse me, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
There's a motion by Representative Manhart and a second by, of course, Representative Yuri Bach. All in favor say aye. Those opposed, nay. We are adjourned.
From choir to debate to theater, SDPB shines a spotlight on South Dakota's talented students through SDHSAA All-State Fine Arts Programming. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB. Every day, SDPB connects South Dakotans with stories that inform, inspire, and bring us together. SDPB, good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB is your home for fact-based journalism, connecting South Dakotans with news they can trust and stories that matter. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB. From children's programs to in-depth documentaries, SDPB sparks curiosity and lifelong learning in every South Dakotan. SDPB, good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB brings South Dakotans together, telling the stories that unite small towns, big ideas, and the people who make our state shine. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB. SDPB shares the voices and experiences of South Dakotans, preserving our stories, our culture, and our sense of place. SDPB, good, useful, and full of wonder. As South Dakota's public media network, SDPB serves everyone with transparency, integrity, and commitment to open access. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB. SDPB helps shape South Dakota's future by educating, informing, and inspiring the next generation of thinkers, leaders, and creators. SDPB. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB serves South Dakota through an interconnected communication system that is on 24/7, 365. The first place for Amber Alerts, public safety announcements, and EAS messages. SDPB keeps public servants and citizens informed. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB. SDPB brings you closer to your government. With gavel-to-gavel coverage of the South Dakota legislature and in-depth reporting from peer. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB. From early learners to lifelong students, SDPB inspires curiosity through trusted educational programs and resources for every stage of life. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB. When South Dakotans need reliable information, SDPB is there providing updates and coverage that keep our communities safe and connected. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB. SDPB celebrates South Dakota's student athletes with live coverage of SDHSAA state championships, sharing the excitement of hometown heroes. SDPB. Good, useful, and full of wonder. From choir to debate to theater, SDPB shines a spotlight on South Dakota's talented students through SDHSAA All-State Fine Arts programming. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB. Every day, SDPB connects South Dakotans with stories that inform, inspire, and bring us together. SDPB, good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB is your home for fact-based journalism, connecting South Dakotans with news they can trust and stories that matter. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB. From children's programs to in-depth documentaries, SDPB sparks curiosity and lifelong learning in every South Dakotan. SDPB. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB brings South Dakotans together, telling the stories that unite small towns, big ideas, and the people who make our state shine. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB. SDPB shares the voices and experiences of South Dakotans, preserving our stories, our culture, and our sense of place. SDPB, good, useful, and full of wonder. As South Dakota's public media network, SDPB serves everyone with transparency, integrity, and commitment to open access. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB.
Good morning. Call the House Judiciary Committee into operation here. Mr. Secretary, please call the roll.
Representative Mortensen. Here. Reich. Here. Wahlberg, excused. Roby. Fitzgerald, excused.
Yes.
Reimer.
Here.
Whitman. Here. Massey. Here. Cole. Here. Courier. Here. Hunt.
Here.
Hughes.
Here.
Stevens.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. We have a motion by Representative Whitman, second by Representative Hunt to approve the minutes. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Minutes are hereby approved. Just a couple of things this morning, ladies and gentlemen. Let's have our pages come up, introduce themselves. Thank you for coming and helping us.
Hi, my name is Lily Sortland. I'm from Rapid City Central, and I'm excited to be here.
Thank you for coming.
Good morning. My name is Ethan Estabrook. I'm here from Mount Vernon, and I'm also excited to be here.
Thank you. Thank you for coming. So just a couple of things as far as we're going to take the bills in the order. We're going to take the testimony for Senate Bill 81 and 82. We're going to take it all at the same time. We'll vote separately on the bills, of course, themselves and any action that we'll take in. And for the committee's information, Walter McDuff was going to testify online, but he's not able to do that, so he's submitted written testimony. So you will include that in our consideration as we take that. So what we're going to do is take Senate Bill 81, an act to clarify the prohibition on injuring or harassing a service animal, as well as Senate Bill 82, an act to prohibit the misrepresentation of an animal as a service animal and to provide a penalty. Therefore, we'll take proponent testimony.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Thank you for being here this morning. So Senate Bills 81 and 82 work together to strengthen service animal law in South Dakota by addressing two related problems, protection and integrity. SB 81 clarifies that intentionally injuring, harassing, or interfering with a legitimate service animal is unlawful. These animals are essential working partners for individuals with disabilities, and when they are harmed, the harm is immediate and personal and could be catastrophic to the person who relies on them. Clear statutory language ensures consistent enforcement and meaningful protection. SB 82 addresses the other side of the issue, misrepresentation. Federal law narrowly defines service animals and limits questioning, but it leaves enforcement against intentional deception to the states. SB 82 aligns South Dakota law with those federal standards while providing a limited tool to deter fraud. Together, these bills draw a clear and balanced line. Legitimate service animals are protected and misuse of that status is discouraged, but we aren't expanding government authority, authorizing intrusive questioning, or creating new regulatory burdens. This is common sense legislation that promotes clarity, fairness, and respect for individuals with disabilities while keeping our laws precise and enforceable. Before I do want to point out some of the handouts that you were just given. One is a memo that I'd asked our LRC staff to prepare when doing research for this issue. And this has been being worked on for the last year. This was an issue brought to me by the next gentleman that's going to be testifying last session. It was too late to introduce legislation at that time. So we have worked on this for a year. South Dakota Codified Law 40-1-38 deals with cruelty to animals, and while it mentions service animals, it does not define them, which is pointed out in the memo, and thus the need for SB 81. The memo also points out that we have nothing in statute currently to address the intentional misrepresentation of a service animal. A number of states do recognize the importance of having clear restrictions on knowingly falsely claiming an animal as a service animal in order to gain certain rights and privileges, which I do find to be an affront to everyone who actually has a disability and has an actual service animal. And I hope you'll agree that that is needed in our state. You'll also see a support letter from Guide Dogs for the Blind. And then the next gentleman will also be pointing out another letter that we're going to get you a copy of as well from the mayor of Rapid City. So I would just ask for your favorable consideration today, and thank you so much for your time this morning.
Thank you very much. Do we have any other proponents for Senate Bill 81 and Senate Bill 82? Any other proponents? Sure, come up. Welcome.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and committee members. My name is Tony Russell. I am from Rapid City, South Dakota, and with me is my service dog, Rush. I am also the vice chair of the Rapid City Disability and Accessibility Committee and an advisory member to the Rocky Mountain ADA Advisory Council. So, while serving in active duty in 2018, I was pronounced dead by Army doctors. I'm here today as a survivor and as a voice for veterans and first responders who cannot be here. Suicide among veterans and first responders is at its highest point in our nation's history. I bring personal experience and the experience of others and urge you to act. During my ongoing recovery, I struggle with both physical and mental health challenges. Multiple doctors at Walter Reed Army Medical Center recommended a service animal to assist with my recovery. However, the typical cost, often around $20,000, put that far out of reach. In 2020, the Rapid City Rush hockey team raised a dog for a veteran, and I, being the lucky recipient, was gifted him during that season. Rush has been life-changing for me and my family. I honestly don't know where I'd be without him. Because of what Rush has done for me, my family and I founded a nonprofit in Rapid City to provide service dogs to veterans and first responders at no cost to them. In our first year, we had over 350 applications of veterans and first responders within the state of South Dakota. Why so many? Because medication and therapy, they're just not always going to work. Therapy, medications, you have to take them on a regular schedule. Therapy, the individual has to participate in. But a service dog has the full autonomy to interrupt panic attacks, steady balance, retrieve medications, and provide critical interventions that help myself function and stay safe. This brings me to the two issues that I asked the committee to address. One is fraudulent service animals and misrepresentation. Many people purchase vests and patches online and present pets as service animals. Not every dog has the temperament or training to perform these life-saving tasks. When a mislabeled animal misbehaves or is aggressive, jumping on tables, defecating in dining areas, or running around off-leash causing chaos, it causes a situation that nobody wants and may end up in an attack of people or other service animals, creating health and safety problems. Clear enforcement and reasonable verification mechanisms for businesses and meaningful penalties for intentionally misrepresentation will protect both businesses and the public while preserving access for truly needed medical devices. Second point that I have is that protection and remedies with service animals that may be attacked or harmed. Service dogs are a medical device for many handlers. Replacing a service dog can cost tens of thousands of dollars. As you heard, there's a letter of support from Guide Dogs. A fully trained, for someone who is 100% visually impaired guide dog, it starts at $60,000. So in the intent that an animal is harmed, it is out of most of our means to obtain a replacement in a quick and easy manner. Beyond financial costs and loss, the loss or disabling of a service animal can remove a handler's primary safety mechanism and jeopardize their life. The law should provide enhanced penalties and mandatory compensation for handlers when a service dog is intentionally attacked or harmed by an animal or individual, excuse me. I'm reading this because I do have a brain injury, and sometimes it is a little bit challenging for me. Answering questions is usually a whole lot easier. But I do also want to bring to the committee's attention that both of these bills have been supported by Jason Solomon, the mayor of Rapid City, who has given me a letter of support as well. And I would urge you to act on these. I do also want to make a note that both of these are in conjunction with the federal ADA. I do refer to and talk to service dogs most of the time because that is my personal interaction. The ADA recognizes service dogs as a primary for most service animals, but it does further down in legislation talk about miniature horses. So this would also apply to miniature horses as well. But I can take any questions or anything from the committee. Thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you, first of all, for your service, and thank you for coming. We're going to take testimony, and then I'm sure there's going to be some questions, okay? Thank you very much. Do we have any other proponent testimony in the room for House or Senate Bill 81 or 82? Representative Schubeck.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and committee. Representative Schubeck, District 16. As many of you know, I was an officer in the Marine Corps and have several Marines that use service animals now. Sorry. I'll just give them me too.
Thank you for your service as well. Do we have any other proponent testimony for Senate Bills 81 and 82? Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Cole Euchre. I'm with Disability Rights South Dakota. I rise here today in support of Senate Bill 81 and 82. I decided to testify today because I wanted to show off my big lawyer brain and talk about further down the codified rules in the federal law talking about miniature horses, but gentleman before me kind of took some of my thunder on that. So I don't think that should affect the existing protections of this law. What I would say about this bill is that people with disabilities rely on service animals for integration, community access, accessibility to many of the areas and services and experiences that we all enjoy without such animals. It has been brought up in the past that there is already laws protecting animals against harassment or abuse, but sometimes laws and legislation is a statement of values of the people of South Dakota. And a service animal is more than just a pet, is more than just an animal that follows somebody around all the time. It really is the way that people access the community. And for that, harassing or otherwise impeding the efforts of that service animal is an affront on that person's rights to do the same things that we do. And I think that increasing the penalties for impeding those activities is a statement that we're making, that those things are that they're important to us as South Dakotans. Additionally, the other bill talking about misrepresentation, that's one of the things that people that use service animals run into all the time. I've heard a few bills come up here to the legislature, and there's a lot of misinformation and consternation around people who might want a service or a support animal and abuse those protections for their own benefit. And so oftentimes when these discussions come up, it really revolves around the misuse, misrepresentation, and that hurts people that actually benefit from service animals. And so having something in place to make sure that people who use service animals are protected and people who abuse those rights are held accountable ultimately benefits the disability community as a whole. So thank you, and I appreciate support for this bill.
Thank you very much for coming. Do we have any other proponents for Senate Bills 81 or 82 in the room? I believe we have one online, is that correct? Christine Spears. And Ms. Spears, can you hear us okay?
Yes, I can hear you fine. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Please go ahead and proceed with your testimony. Thank you.
I am for both the bills because I am an Army and Gulf War veteran, and excuse me, when I was over in Iraq, I was exposed to sarin gas, and because of that, I now have MS, which is the main one I have, and I have a service dog who helps me walk at times. He keeps me from falling, and people that have a dog, when they take and put a service dog vest on their pet, you can tell the difference between a service dog and a pet, and it makes it hard for people with service dogs who have a controlled dog who is very well behaved, and you have the pets come in and they try to get to the service dogs. They try to do things that service dogs are trained not to do. And so I'm in favor of both of those bills because people that are using their pets as service dogs should face some sort of penalty for that, because it makes it harder for people with service dogs to be able to get their dogs to function like they're supposed to.
Thank you. Are you through, ma'am?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
You bet. Well, thank you very much for taking your time to come and testify for us today. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Do we have any other proponent testimony? Do we? Representative Howard, do you have anybody else? Okay. Then we'll close proponent testimony, open it up to opponent testimony. Mr. Anderson.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Cash Anderson, registered lobbyist for the South Dakota Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers. I'm a lawyer here in Pierre. I want to be clear, our opposition to this is extremely narrow in scope. up here in opposition to Senate Bill 81. And the reason for the opposition is the one strike through and one addition of making Class 2 a Class 1 misdemeanor. And this is the reason for this. This isn't an indictment. This opposition is not an indictment on service animals or the people using service animals. And in fact, this opposition is in support of kind of what this bill does. People should be held accountable if they're doing this. But this statute has only been prosecuted. It came into effect July of 1995 when the original bill passed, and there's only been 2 cases that have been charged out, one in 2012 in Hughes County, one in 2006 in Butte County. Both of those ended in convictions. So I think this statute is doing what it's supposed to do if you believe in the deterrent effects of penalties and statutes. And I just don't think upping the penalty just to up the penalty does anything good and doesn't further the purpose of the statute. I think it's currently serving as an adequate deterrent. And a Class 2 misdemeanor, how it originally is or how the statute is right now, can still be quite the punishment. That's up to 30 days in jail. Obviously, someone, if convicted of this, is going to have to explain in the future why in their history a conviction for injuring or harassing a service animal might be on their record, and it's extremely hard to defend, and that's for good reason. If this is happening, it should be reported, and these people should be held accountable, but I don't think upping the penalty helps accomplish that. And I think putting this on an even, or for example, putting this as a Class 1 misdemeanor, distracting the dog and punching the person are the same penalties. So that is our very limited opposition to this. Thank you.
Do we have any other opposition to either Senate Bill 81 or Senate Bill 82? Seeing none, then we'll close opposition and open up to rebuttal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Taffy Howard, District 34. Well, I want to address a few things. First of all, I would say we are not upping the penalty just to up the penalty. We are increasing the penalty because we are emphasizing how important this is. As was pointed out by the previous Mr. Russell when he testified, these are not pets. In some cases, these are life-saving medical devices. You injure, harass, you distract that dog from doing its job. It is a working animal. You distract that dog from doing its job, and you don't know what those consequences could be. I mean, if you just don't know. I mean, is it somebody who may have a seizure, the dog is distracted, can't help that person? In some cases, that dog has to be off leash on its own, going to get medical assistance. So I think these are common sense bills that need to be brought. And we're not talking about accidental contact. We're not talking, nobody's going to be prosecuted because your child went up and pet, a service animal, because we all want to do that. This is talking about distracting a working dog from doing its job, which could have life-altering consequences. So again, I would just urge your favorable consideration of both these bills. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. We'll close testimony at this time, open up to committee questions. Anybody have any committee questions? I have a couple. I understand the purposes of both bills, don't have any issues with those, but I'm just wondering from a public standpoint, how does an employer or whomever, how would we know if they're a legitimate service dog? Does that make sense?
It does, and thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate that question because we do need to educate the public. Most individuals, I have educated so many Walmart employees you would not believe, but you are allowed to ask 2 questions. Is a dog a service animal required because of a disability? And what work or task has a dog been trained to perform? Those are 2 questions the federal government allows you to ask as a business owner. If they cannot legitimately answer those questions, then you have action that you can pursue. So
do service dogs have to wear anything, identification on the dog themselves?
They do not. That's not a federal requirement. Yeah.
Any further questions? Representative Cole.
Just to follow up on that, so if a law enforcement officer was contacted about a service dog, then people felt it was being misrepresented. Someone had gone online and bought one of these tags. How would that law enforcement officer be able to discern that, yes, this is a legitimate? I mean, is it a card carrying type of thing, or is there some way of just identifying?
Mr. Chair, there is no federal requirement that there's no standardized training that service animals have to go through. So at that point, it would become a law enforcement. I mean, I think they would then be pursuing these two questions. You know, it would be up to the business owner, it'd be up to the law enforcement. I do think the increased penalty makes it more worthwhile for law enforcement to pursue. But I think they would go back to these two questions, you know, and the owner of the fake service animal would then have to prove, you know, what disability do you have? What task has this dog been trained to perform? So, you know, I don't know if that helped. But it would be up to law enforcement, and I think because they could provide prove that you have a disability. You know, that gets into the realm of law enforcement. And
Any further questions by committee members? Seeing none, then we'll close questions and open up to committee discussion or action. We're going to take Senate Bill 81 first.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
On 81 and do pass.
Second. Okay, we have a motion by Representative Cole, second by Representative Fitzgerald for due pass. Further comments?
Just that moving it from a Class 2 to a Class 1, for me, it makes sense. I mean, if someone's going out of their way to do the things that are outlined there, harass them, purposely distract them from doing their job, it's more than just a rolling through a stop sign or anything like that. That's a Class 2. I mean, it's an act that is reprehensible. It's good to hear that, you know, we've only had 2 cases in the years. But if something like that, if someone went out of their way to do something like that, I do think that it would fall into that Class 1 category. Thank you.
Further comments?
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Representative Hughes.
I'd just like to emphasize that the standard is malicious, and so I have no problem with this bill, and we'll support it.
Yeah. Any other comments? You know, my only concern is that I wish there was something in here that would make it easier to identify the people, whether it's a card or they have to have a sign or this or that. I'm not sure how many people know that the 2 questions that the good sponsor, you know, and if you're a businessman, are you really going to go ask somebody those 2 questions? You're probably not if you don't want to lose business or this or that, but otherwise that would be my only concerns, and we can deal with that next time, I guess. So what we have in front of us, we're going to take Senate Bill 81 first, an act to clarify the prohibition on injuring or harassing a service animal. We have a motion by Representative Cole, second by Representative Fitzgerald for a due pass. All those in favor vote aye. All those opposed, nay. Mr. Secretary, please call the roll.
Representative Mortensen.
Aye.
Reich. Aye. Wahlberg, excused. Roby.
Aye.
Fitzgerald.
Aye.
Reimer.
Aye.
Whitman.
Aye.
Massey.
Aye.
Cole.
Aye.
Poirier. Hunt.
Aye.
Hughes.
Aye.
Stevens.
Aye.
12 yeas, 0 nay, 1 excused.
Senate Bill 81 is hereby passed. Any objections to consent? It's going on consent. Next vote we have up is Senate Bill 82, and 82 is an act to prohibit the misrepresentation of an animal as a service animal and to provide a penalty therefore. We have a motion. Discussion.
Mr.
Yes,
Chairman.
Representative Mortensen.
I move do pass.
Second.
Second by Representative Hughes. Representative Mortensen, do you have any comments?
I saw this bill, it was pre-filed, I'm a co-sponsor of it, and I think it makes a tremendous amount of sense. I've actually gotten a chance to know Mr. Russell in the last few years and the mission that he's carrying out in Rapid City on behalf of people who are similarly situated to him. And you can tell from his testimony and what he told us, the pride he takes in this work. And so there's almost no bigger affront to that pride than somebody, it's a form of stolen valor almost. And it's not, of course, in the military service context, but to be obtaining those rights and privileges fraudulently is an abhorrent act. And so I think that this bill makes sense. And to your point, will there be strict enforcement of this? Perhaps not. Maybe that is to be built, or maybe this is sufficient to be a deterrent once folks know. This isn't something to be played around with. This isn't something to, again, use fraudulently. So I really appreciate the sponsor and these tandem bills coming forward, and appreciate an eye on the due pass.
Representative Hughes, any comments?
Just that all of our hearts strive with those that have served and are serving our country. And my son had one deployment, and he was a fluent Arab speaker, so it was not a combat deployment, but he is Ranger qualified and was in harm's way. And it's hard for me to express my emotions, I guess, but thank you. I know that service veterans, they don't want our sympathy. They want our gratitude. And so we thank you for your service.
Yes, Representative Whitman.
I'd just like to thank you. My partner is a disabled veteran, and I've seen up close how hard it is for our veterans to fight for their independence and their autonomy and their dignity. And so just thank you for bringing both of these bills forward. It's about dignity for our South Dakotans that need this support system, and I'm really grateful.
Any further comments? Seeing none, then what we have in front of you is Senate Bill 82, an act to prohibit the misrepresentation of an animal service animal and to provide a penalty therefor. The motion was made to do pass by Representative Mortensen, second by Representative Hughes. Mr. Secretary, please call the roll. All those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed, nay.
Representative Mortensen.
Aye.
Reich.
Aye.
Wahlberg, excused. Roby.
Aye.
Fitzgerald.
Aye.
Reimer.
Aye.
Whitman.
Aye.
Massey.
Aye.
Cole.
Aye.
Poirier.
Aye.
Hunt.
Aye.
Hughes.
Aye.
Stevens.
Aye.
12 yea, 0 nay, 1 excused.
Senate Bill 82 is hereby passed. Any objections to consent? Seeing none, we'll go on the consent. Thank you for coming and testifying, everyone. Next bill up we have is Senate Bill 113, an act to increase the penalty for preventing practice of religion. We'll take proponent testimony at this time. Good morning, Representative.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of my old committee, the Judiciary Committee. Great committee, a lot of fun, good issues all the time. I bring you today Senate Bill 113. I, along with my counterpart, well, first I should say my name is Scott Odenbach, represent District 31, all of Lawrence County, and I'm the majority leader in the South Dakota House. And I, along with my counterpart, the majority leader in the Senate, are the prime sponsors of Senate Bill 113 that I bring with you today. When this bill was introduced, we, along with the Speaker and the President Pro Tem of the Senate and the Governor, all basically introduced this bill together as a show of unity, really, that as a state we take the matters covered in this bill very seriously. This bill essentially takes what is currently, it's a very simple bill, it takes what is currently a Class 1 misdemeanor and turns it into a Class 6 felony for any person who by threat or violence intentionally prevents another person from performing any lawful act enjoined upon or recommended by the religion the other person professes. And this all came about, you probably will remember, it was an incident on January 18th of 2026 at Cities Church in St. Paul, Minnesota, where protesters were targeting a pastor for his participation with ICE operations. And I think it was very alarming to many, many people to see it because they did see it and it was on camera that day. And so what we're attempting to do here basically is say that kind of thing may happen across the border from us to the east or in other states, but we're not going to just stand by and let that sort of thing happen in South Dakota. And I did some checking just this morning, and I mentioned the fact that this was on camera as to why it was so alarming. But the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops records 370 attacks on Catholic churches since 2020, things like arson, destruction of property, etc. And overall, other groups report 1,380 or more than 1,380 incidents between 2018 and 2024 of arson, vandalism, and threats to places of worship in the United States. So it is an issue. Unfortunately, it's a growing issue. And the bill applies to, whatever place of worship you're in. And we just think that it makes it a better penalty, and it also in part sends a message that we're not going to tolerate that here. I know there's some other good proponent testimony, so I will let them speak and stand by for any questions I may be able to answer. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have any other proponents for Senate Bill 113?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Ryan Bruner from the Governor's Office. It's my pleasure to be here this morning and ask for your support of Senate Bill 113. Representative Odenbach did a fantastic job laying out the situation that occurred in Minneapolis that brought up this conversation. I would also add there was a situation a couple weeks later in New York where a Democrat congressman, Representative Suozzi, was at a synagogue in New York City and was interrupted as well. And so it is a situation that unfortunately has occurred in recent times, which brought up a review of current state law. The governor asked us to look at current state law and see if we needed to make any changes when those events occurred, and appreciate Leader Odenbach, Melhoff, Speaker Hansen, and Senator Carr for working with us on this legislation. When we were doing that review of the law, as Representative Odenbach led, we found SDCL 2219B4, which already makes it a crime, but is a Class 1 misdemeanor, to use threats or violence to interrupt a lawful act. The second question then is a Class 1 misdemeanor the appropriate crime? And we determined that a Class 6 felony would be a more appropriate crime. And that really comes down to reviewing the criminal code. And if you think about other Class 1 misdemeanors, the easiest comparison is criminal trespass. And so trespassing is a Class 1 misdemeanor. And that's pretty straightforward. Were you there? Were you asked to leave? Did you not leave? Then you've committed criminal trespass, which is a Class 1 misdemeanor. But when you add in threat or violence, which is in the statute now, when you add in threat or violence, a Class 6 felony would be more appropriate because of that threat or violence. Puts it more in line with malicious intimidation, which is more in line with a hate crime. If the situation escalates from there, state's attorney, you've got terroristic threats as a Class 5 felony, riots a Class 4 felony, and riot with a weapon is a Class 3 felony. And so the goal is to give your state's attorneys, and they're in another committee, so they may not be able to make it this morning, but is to give the state's attorneys a full suite of tools in the toolbox to assess the situation, determine an appropriate charge, and prosecute that accordingly, whether that's criminal trespass, or if they've escalated to preventing the practice of religion, that should be a Class 6 felony. That also answers a lot of the what ifs. Some of those came up on the Senate side, different scenarios, what if this or what if that? Well, really you have to ask yourself is, did it involve threats or violence, and was it a lawful act? And so those are the two questions that answer most of those scenarios that could come up or might be playing through your head. That's the answer to that question. So in closing, I'll leave you with this. The situation in Minneapolis and the one in New York are situations we hope never occur in South Dakota. We hope that folks remain civil, that we don't have those situations occur. But if they do occur, we need to make sure we have the appropriate protections in place and the appropriate criminal prosecutions in place should those occur here. Our laws are a reflection of our values as a society. And I would tell you that I believe one of our most sacred values is the freedom of religion. This bill provides additional protections for that freedom and to protect the freedom of religion by allowing people to practice that. And I would ask for your support of Senate Bill 113. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other proponents for Senate Bill 113?
Morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Don Hager. I'm representing Family Voice this morning as a registered lobbyist. And here today to offer, obviously, my strong support for Senate Bill 113. It elevates, as you know, the penalty for intentionally preventing another person from practicing their religion through threats or violence from a Class 1 misdemeanor to
that Class 6 felony that the previous speakers just mentioned. Now, this is not a new situation. I mean, candidly, if you want to go back to the 1600s, the Pilgrims came to the colonies, to North America, because of their desire for freedom of religion. They wanted to practice religion the way they thought it should be practiced, and for fear, without fear from reprisal. And even in our state, we've had issues 120 years ago with the KKK, threatening and in fact violently attacking Irish Catholics. So it's not a new situation. But the thing is, I see this bill as a measured, necessary step to really safeguard, that fundamental right, the freedom to worship without fear of disruption or intimidation. And churches and synagogues and even mosques and other places of worship should be sanctuaries of peace, not venues for chaos that forces families, including children, to flee or to cut services short. And you heard the previous speaker mention the situation in Minneapolis, and that's really very disconcerting, because you had congregates, including families with young children, who had to evacuate amid all that commotion, and federal authorities later arrested several of those ringleaders for violating religious freedom protections. And I think that's what we're trying to do here is provide those protections. But this wasn't isolated. There are reports recently that highlight an increasing pattern of hostility. You heard the majority leader reference some numbers. I'll give you some more current numbers. The Family Research Council documented 415 acts of aggression against U.S. churches in 2024 alone. 415 in 1 year. And that includes vandalism and arson, gun-related threats, and other service disruptions. Now, so the thing is, closer to home, we've seen how quickly these incidences can escalate, and from armed attacks at places of worship and targeted interruptions that leave communities candidly shaken. Elevating this to a felony sends a clear deterrent message. Intentional interference with religious practice through the threats of violence or threats or violence will carry real consequences, and without infringing on legitimate, free speech or peaceful assembly. And this really isn't about overreach. It's not a solution looking for a problem. It's about risk management. Just like businesses invest in security to protect their employees and their customers, our state should strengthen protections for houses of worship. And I think Senate Bill 113 does this, targets harmful conduct while respecting constitutional boundaries. And so I'll ask you as well to support this legislation and send it on. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other proponents for Senate Bill 113?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Stephen Gamer here on behalf of the South Dakota Attorney General's Office. We too rise in support of Senate Bill 113 and echo the sentiments of the prior proponents. We believe this bill provides an important protection and also fills a gap in our laws that needs to be addressed. And with that, we would ask for your support. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have any other proponents for Senate Bill 113? Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Eric Erickson with the State's Attorneys Association. We'd echo the comments of the AG's office and look for your favorable consideration.
Thank you. Any other proponents for Senate Bill 113? Any other? Seeing none, do we have any opponents to Senate Bill 113?
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Cash Anderson, registered lobbyist for the South Dakota Association of Criminal Defense Lawyer. I'm a lawyer here in Pierre. I think anytime there's a new felony added, me or my counterpart typically get up, and this is relatively soft opposition, but the current statute in place is at a Class 1 misdemeanor for the penalty. And I think any time that you have a bill that comes up and implicates religion and implicates a criminal charge, the obvious concern is constitutionality. I think this is different than the other bills or bill that's been in front of this committee as it relates to constitutionality, but I think that's always a concern, and I think attaching the felony level to it would make a lawyer more apt or more want to challenge the constitutionality and favoring the protection of, religion versus other forms of speech. I think one reason we don't know or haven't seen a constitutional challenge on this statute is there has never been a charge brought under this statute. I understand where this comes from. I get the thought behind it, but I'm not sure what problem we're seeking to solve with this. We're not Minnesota. We're not New York. What we have works. And I think here, should anything ever happen where this statute might get implicated, this would be one of 5 to 10 plus charges that would be brought. I think this just leads to stacking of charges. And again, I just don't see this as a problem. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Do we have any other opponents to Senate Bill 113? Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Samantha Chapman. I'm the registered lobbyist for the ACLU of South Dakota. We rise today in opposition to this bill. We are sympathetic to the goals of this legislation. Certainly, the ACLU works to protect and expand the promises and protections of the U.S. Constitution, especially notably with a strong emphasis on protecting First Amendment rights. Our opposition today is also soft in that the First Amendment right of religious freedom is already protected by federal statutes and existing state law, and we believe this bill is unnecessary. Federal law offers a deterrent against intentional disruption of worship services through the FACE Act. It's my understanding that the individuals who disrupted the worship service in St. Paul are facing those charges under federal law currently. And the law that we're amending today, as Mr. Anderson referenced, has been on the books in South Dakota since 1976. And in my research in e-courts has never been used as a criminal charge since it's been in effect. We also have other laws in place that can adequately address more specifically the situations that might come up, like the demonstration that did occur in St. Paul, such as 2219B1, which is malicious intimidation or harassment. That's a felony charge. 2932 allows for a civil cause of action in addition to that felony charge for malicious intimidation or harassment. We also have 2235.5, which is criminal trespassing, 2218.1, simple assault. There are existing federal and state laws that do allow for felony charges to be brought against an individual to address specific criminal acts. We believe that by elevating the penalty for this charge, it's unnecessary when we already have laws that address that, and they are already serving as effective deterrents against acts described by the proponents. While the intentions of protecting our right to practice religion are noble, we view this escalation of a criminal charge as just unnecessary. So for these reasons, we respectfully urge your no vote. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have any other opponents to Senate Bill 113? Seeing none, then do we have any rebuttal? Representative, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Representative Scott Odenbach, District 31. I just thought it was well said by one of the previous proponents, Don Hager. He said our places of worship should be sanctuaries for peace, not venues for chaos. That's really well said. And, as to the FACE Act, being a federal law, it's good that there's charges pending under that over in Minnesota, but we don't always know who's going to be running our federal prosecutor offices. And we've seen some instances in the past prior administrations where certain things get overlooked and certain things don't. And so I think we're smarter as a state to just make sure that we've got tough laws in place for this, frankly, and that we send a clear message. This may be different than other states, and I'm real happy with that. We're not going to become like them, so I hope you'll support this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll close testimony at this time. Open it up to committee questions. Mr. Chair? Yes, Representative Whitman.
Thank you. This is a question for Mr. Gamer.
Stephen Gamer here on behalf of the Attorney General's office, Mr. Chair.
finished your testimony saying you believe that this addresses a gap in the law. Could you just expand on that a little bit more for me?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Representative Whitman, that was in regards to Mr. Bruner's comments about criminal trespass as a Class 1 misdemeanor, nothing really at that Class 6 felony level, then going up to acts of terrorism at the Class 5 level. And this bill would fill in that kind of charging gap at the Class 6 level for prosecutors.
Follow up, Mr. Chair. Why do you feel that a Class 6 felony is an appropriate level rather than enhancing the misdemeanor or creating aggravated circumstances?
That would be maybe a better question for Mr. Bruner.
Mr. Chairman, Ryan Bruner from the Governor's Office. I know, so part of your question is about aggravating circumstances. I guess when I did some of this review, I looked at the malicious intimidation statute that came up that's a Class 6 felony, and that is a felony because of your status, so race, creed, or religion. So that would be if I attacked you because you were Jewish, that is malicious intimidation, whereas this is the actual practice of religion. And so I feel like there's a gap there. There's a reason we have two different statutes, because one is a status, race, creed, or religion. The other is the actual practice of that religion. And so it's already a crime today. Because you add threats or violence we usually see escalate to a felony level.
Follow up, Mr. Chair. Thank you. Do you think that moving this to a felony will actually deter somebody who's already willing to use threats or violence in this way?
Mr. Chairman, so there's two sides of that coin. There's criminal deterrent by knowing that there are penalties for your action, and then there's also justice for victims. If you think of the Minneapolis situations, you have parents, what are the, when they're telling their children what happened today in church, if they're saying, oh, well, it was no big deal, I'm sorry you were scared, they got a misdemeanor charge, versus, no, this is a serious deal, and they've been charged with a felony, and as a society, we believe that protecting the freedom of religion is important. So I think there's two sides of that. There's both deterrent, but also there's also justice for the victims.
Further questions by the committee? Seeing none, we'll close questions and open up to committee discussion and or action.
Mr. Chair.
Representative Roby.
Move due pass.
Okay, we have a motion for due pass by Representative Roby, second by Representative Reich. Comments?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, so we had there was another bill this year that dealt with this issue in a different way, and it kind of been implicated more free speech issues, and it failed to pass the House. I think this bill, in a more targeted way, emphasizes that we take this seriously, and that this penalty is an appropriate reflection of the seriousness of what we've seen around the country that we don't want to happen here. So I'd recommend due pass. Thanks.
Further comments? Representative Whitman.
Thank you. I think everybody in this body cares a lot about protecting religious freedom, and we all agree that nobody should be threatened with harm for practicing their faith. But I have a really hard time adding yet another felony to our books coming off of lengthy discussions last year around a new prison, when I believe that this conduct is already covered under existing statutes. A felony conviction carries lifelong consequences. It is an extreme deterrent, as we heard from the governor's office, but I believe we should reserve that level of punishment for situations where there's a clear gap in our law. That's why I'll be voting no. Thank you.
Further discussions?
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Representative Hughes.
I'm going to support this bill, even though, as Representative Roby mentioned, we sent a couple of bills previously to the 41st day. I'm persuaded by the fact that we have a consistent we have a consistent setting forth of escalating potential criminal prosecutions based on the degree of bad action that's going on, and increasing preventing the practice of religion to a Class 6 felony fits well within that structure. And so that's why I'm going to support this bill.
Further discussion? Seeing none, what we have in front of us is a motion due pass by Representative Roby, second by Representative Reich, to Senate Bill 113, an act to increase the penalty for preventing practice of religion. All those in favor will vote aye. All those opposed, nay. Mr. Secretary, please call the roll.
Representative Mortensen.
Aye.
Reich. Aye. Wahlberg, excused. Roby.
Aye.
Fitzgerald.
Aye.
Reimer.
Aye.
Whitman.
Nay.
Massey.
Aye.
Cole.
Aye.
Poirier. Hunt.
No.
Hughes.
Aye.
Stevens.
Aye.
10 yea, 2 nay, 1 excused.
House Bill 113 having passed with a 10-2 vote. The next bill up will be Senate Bill 100. I'll turn the gavel over to Representative Hughes.
A candy bar should be in.
There we go. All right. Next on the agenda is the legislative bill, Senate Bill 100, to revise provisions related to trusts. At this time, it would be appropriate to call for proponent testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the Judiciary Committee. Mike Stevens from District 18. This bill is brought to you on behalf of the South Dakota Governor's Trust Task Force. Some incredibly very, very bright people that have helped our trust laws become the best in the nation, and I believe, and have added tremendous economic value to our state. You know, one of the things I've discovered is that in my practice as time has gone on, there's virtually every week somebody comes in and wants to ask a question about trusts. And it doesn't make any difference if they're old or young, what their economic situation is. They are in asking questions about it. And this group of individuals have done a really great job tweaking our laws as they have existed. And I think this bill that's brought forth to you today really is doing that today, is just tweaking some things. I don't think there's big substantive changes that are being made at all. You know, I think back, you know, every year we have this little tweaking going on, and someone might say, well, how come the South Dakota Governor's Trust Task Force is constantly bringing these tweakings? Well, you remember Moses started off with 10. And then there was Leviticus, and then there was Numbers, and then there was Deuteronomy, and so I kind of put it in that case situation. So I'm going to turn it over to the individual that works with us every day, and I think she'll be able to go through these parts, and I think you'll find each section is very specific and a minor tweak. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Stevens, and do remember to sign in, please. All right. I was, yeah. I had help. All right, now, please step forward and identify yourself, please. And I notice, do you have a lobbyist badge?
No, I'm not a lobbyist.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
That's good, too.
I think so as well.
All right, thank you. Please proceed.
Yes, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, I'm Jennifer Bunkers. I'm an attorney in private practice in Sioux Falls, and I'm part of the Governor's Task Force, and here in support of SB 100. And as Representative Stevens mentioned, this is mainly, I would categorize as housekeeping of our trust laws in response to ongoing things happening. For example, the IRS came out with the advice memorandum that we're responding to by adding a statute to our trust laws. We're updating a cross-reference to a statute in another case. You know, I can certainly go through line by line, but at the same time, I want to be respectful of your time, and sometimes these statutes get in the weeds pretty deep. So with that, I would just ask for your support of this legislation, and happy to answer questions.
Thank you. Further proponent testimony?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Tara Larson. I'm an attorney here in Pierre and registered lobbyist for the South Dakota Trust Association. Representative Stevens had provided kind of a step-by-step
discussion of the bill itself, and so I won't belabor that. I am available for questions, but frankly, Ms. Bunkers is the expert on this, as she was there. I would like to make a comment with regard to the Governor's Trust Task Force. Everything that goes through there has to come out of unanimous consent. These people are specialists in the industry. We have ex officio members, one of whom is going to be up here talking. They are much smarter than I am, and well, frankly, I'm not that smart anyway, but they're much smarter than I am anyway. But I did want to talk a little bit about the sheet that Representative Stevens handed out, the survey sheet. So the Trust Association engaged the Dakota Institute to do an economic impact report for what the trust industry looks like in South Dakota. There were questions on that, and I think it's important that annually those within the trust industry and the trust industry bring forth $310 million to the economy of our state. That's including 86.4, excuse me, I can't, read numbers, obviously, $1 million in direct GDP, $91 million of salary for professionals that are in this industry. These are good white-collar jobs in South Dakota. These are jobs that if they were gone, there would be no replacement, right? You just can't find another $150,000 job to go into. We stand in support of this legislation. And again, I will yield to the expert, Ms. Bunkers, for questions. Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Brett Aftel with the Department of Labor and Regulation Division of Banking. As it was referred to, I'm not a member of the task force. I've been involved with it for a very long time in different roles. And as Ms. Larson mentioned, well, first I want to say Ms. Bunkers is very not one to talk about herself. She actually chairs the task force. She failed to mention that. But also on the point about this is a consensus-driven body, and I think this year is a perfect example of that. The bill was in fairly final form. One of the members came forward to identify an issue after further vetting of an item that was in the bill. And the task force pretty quickly agreed that that one's not ready to go, so we'll pull it out of the bill and we'll talk about it further next year. That's just the level of detail that the members of this body, this unpaid body, goes into. And then we, in our office, deal with kind of the industry side of this. You bring trust to South Dakota. It also brings groups that want to operate trust companies in South Dakota. We currently have over 115 of them that we regulate. So we track some numbers related to these companies. The companies themselves employ over 500 people. There's also additional lawyers, accountants. They rent space, they advertise, they do all those things normal businesses do. They also pay the bank franchise tax, even though they're not technically banks, under South Dakota law anyway, and they paid collectively $7.7 million in franchise taxes last year. And that's on a increasing trend because it does tier in over their first 5 years of business, even if we have some private companies that really are on a break-even basis, but they still pay that minimum franchise tax that after their 5th year is $25,000 per company. And then they pay for their supervision. So last year they paid supervisory fees to our office of $1.5 million. So that pays for our staff and time to provide that oversight. And then they also reimburse us for our out-of-pocket expenses performing those exams. So that was another $694,000. So I have 22 FTE that are dedicated full-time to this area, performing exams, reviewing exams, coordinating with other states for companies that open offices elsewhere. So FY24, we conducted 44 trust exams. FY25, we conducted 45, and then we're projecting we'll complete 50 exams this year. So any given week, we have multiple exams going on, so those 22 people keep very, very busy to conduct all the exams. And they're a wide range of companies, from a single-family private company with 6 accounts that doesn't take a lot of time to do that exam up to, we have some large self-directed IRA custodians that have, hundreds of thousands of accounts. So the scope of the exam varies based on the size and complexity of the company. And we have a very wide, I would say our examiners see more in 1 year doing these exams than examiners from other states see in their whole career. It's just a numbers thing. We have a wide variety of companies, and we examine them all. So I would urge you to support the bill. Thank you.
Further proponent testimony?
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. My name is Carl Adam. I serve as the president and CEO of the South Dakota Bankers Association, representing over 70 member banks here in South Dakota. And we rise in support of Senate Bill 100, as many of our banks here in South Dakota also have significant trust departments. So we are very supportive of Senate Bill 100 and urge your support. Thank you.
And further proponent testimony?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Dean Krogman. I represent the Independent Community Bankers of South Dakota. Our membership consists of approximately 60 charters, 400 locations, and 20,000 employees, and we do support this legislation. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further proponent testimony? Seeing none, we will move to opponent testimony. Do we have any opponent testimony? All right, seeing none, let's move into committee questions.
Sorry, I forgot your name.
Jennifer Bunkers.
Okay, I'm reading the sheet that was handed out by Representative Stevens, and in section 5 and 6, at the end of it, it's saying that this bill is to clarify that the privilege is with the trust fiduciary and not the beneficiaries. Can you explain to me why we're trying to move away from having transparency with the beneficiaries?
I would say it's not a move away from transparency. It's an effort to clarify that the attorney-client privilege extends to the fiduciary, and that's to encourage a fiduciary to understand and to seek legal advice so they can represent the trust, which will benefit the beneficiaries. Ultimately, because that's the job of the trustee. They have a fiduciary responsibility toward the trust and its beneficiaries. You can see beneficiaries maybe disagree on things, and that's why a trustee may need to seek legal advice. And so it's just a protection for the fiduciary to clarify the attorney-client privilege does not extend to beneficiaries. They do have different interests in a trust. They have competing interests oftentimes. And so this is something that was also first, I believe the first state was Delaware who adopted this type of legislation. And that's what our committee likes to do as well. We don't necessarily like to be pioneers and be the first one because, we want to maybe lean on other states to see how these things work. So we looked at Delaware, Texas, Oregon are the ones that come to mind, where what the end result or the goal with this type of legislation or this type of structure is to make sure that the trustee is giving the best advice so they can work for the best benefit of the trust, the intentions of the grantor for the beneficiaries. So hopefully that answers the question, but happy to try to clarify more if you'd like. Okay, very good. It's
Certainly, Representative.
So if a trustee is using the beneficiary's inheritance to pay for the legal advice on how to manage the inheritance, why would the law permit us to not give that advice to the very people who paid for it, the beneficiaries?
Yeah, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
I understand the question because it can be it can be tricky because ultimately, like I said, the beneficiaries may have a different motive, adverse to each other and or the trustee, and so that is why we have to parse this issue out. Otherwise, I think what you'll see is that trustees will stop seeking legal advice because they fear that what they're asking will subject them to liability. And I think that is the cornerstone of our industry to make sure the trustees doing the best job they can and they understand the law. And I think that's just the natural fallout, if you want to call it that, if we don't have this exception.
I'd like to answer that as well.
Representative Stevenson.
Yes, thank you. Really what it comes down to, Representative, is that we don't want to have a conflict of interest. We don't want the trustee be giving somebody advice that could be detrimental to them. So by them just representing the trust, then the beneficiaries know that that's their only client. And so you really need, they are then better, the beneficiaries are better protected by the fact that they know they're only given advice for the trust and they need to get their own information. Otherwise, they might make a decision that's not in their best interest because they relied upon what they believe that their trust was also representing them. And that's why it's so important for them to know that there's, they don't want to have a conflict of interest.
Representative.
Yeah, thank you. I have a question probably for Ms. Bunkers. Is that right? If I'm saying that right?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. So if the attorney-client privilege isn't clearly defined, could that still create potential conflicts?
There will, Mr. Chair,
Yes, please.
there's an inherent conflict of interest between a fiduciary and their ward, I would argue. So I don't know if I'm answering the right question, or would you mind adding to the question, make sure I'm answering the right one? Or maybe just repeat the question for me and I might be able to.
So if an attorney-client privilege isn't clearly defined, could that potentially create some conflicts with?
The attorney-client privilege is defined. This is what we would call the fiduciary exception to that privilege.
Okay.
Because we are, the privilege doesn't extend to the beneficiaries.
Okay. Yep. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Other committee questions? All right. I have one question, Ms. Bunkers.
Yes.
Approximately how many, what's the total value of all the assets that are held in trust?
I would refer to perhaps the handout that Ms. Larson, I believe it's on that sheet. I don't know that. It's not committed to memory, unfortunately, for me.
Ms. Larson, do you have the, well, oh, here we go. All right, sir.
He's the expert.
Yeah, all right, thank you.
Mr. Chair, Brett Aftal with the Division of Banking. I can give you a partial answer because our remit is for state chartered trust companies, state chartered banks, so national banks would be in addition to this, but the 115 plus trust companies we had, I think end of 2024 report $813 billion in assets. Here in the next month, we should have 2025 data. And then the bank trust departments, we have 9 state chartered bank trust departments that have about, I think it's north of $12 billion in assets. So,
All righty, thank you. I appreciate knowing the magnitude of the industry. Thank you.
it's real money, yes.
Yeah, thank you. Do we have any other committee questions? Seeing none, we'll move into committee discussion or action. Representative,
I move do pass.
do we have a second?
Second.
All right, we have a motion do pass by Representative Mortensen, seconded by Representative Whitman. Discussion, please.
Yeah, I mean, this is an industry I think we should take a lot of pride in. It is an example of leveraging expertise by the citizens of our state in innovative ways that have really created this industry out of only that ingenuity. And I was very glad to hear when Ms. Bunkers, I believe, said that we don't always have to pioneer. Sometimes we have, and it's been to our benefit. But more so, I think that we can trust this group to come together and have vetted out a lot of these provisions. I think it's good that we give it a good, thorough review. With respect to the representation of a trust and the beneficiaries, I think that was well explained. It doesn't cause me any heartache at all because whoever the attorney is for the trust has to work for the trust and can't be put in a position where they have to represent each one of the beneficiaries or they're going to wind up hopelessly conflicted. And so I think that clarifies that. But just onward, and I think it was very well presented and well defended, and I hope it is broadly supported.
Further discussion? Seeing none, we'll put the question to the committee. We have a motion by Representative Mortensen, seconded by Representative Whitman, to do pass on SB 100. All those in favor say aye. All those against say nay. And would the secretary please call the roll?
Representative Mortensen.
Aye.
Reich.
Aye.
Wahlberg, excused. Roby.
Aye.
Fitzgerald.
Aye.
Reimer.
Aye.
Whitman.
Aye.
Massey.
Aye.
Cole.
Aye.
Poirier. Hunt.
No.
Hughes.
Aye.
Stevens. 11 yea, 1 nay, 1 excused.
All right, that completes our agenda.
Mr. Chair,
Oh, yes. I'm sorry.
personal privilege.
Oh, of course.
I just thought I'd quickly introduce my family here this morning in the audience. My mom, Ann Roby, and my mother and father-in-law, Dave and Mary Peterson, came out to take in the festivities today. So
Welcome. Please stand. Please stand. Well, then don't. Okay. Right. Motion, are we done? Motion by Representative Stevenson, seconded by Representative Hunt to adjourn. All in favor? Aye.
From early learners to lifelong students, SDPB inspires curiosity through trusted educational programs and resources for every stage of life. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB. When South Dakotans need reliable information, SDPB is there providing updates and coverage that keep our communities safe and connected. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB.